Do you know what one of the most dangerous and scary lakes in the U.S. looks like? Let's check it out. This large lake is filled with blue water reflecting the sun's rays. Lush thickets of oaks and other trees surround this picturesque place. More than 150 small islands, which are the tops of hills, stick out from under the surface. People come here to swim and play frisbee, go boating, and sit quietly on the sand. Nothing dangerous, right? But if you dive underwater with scuba gear and start exploring the seabed, you'll see that it hides old fishing nets, broken sunken boats, debris of houses, and even graves. If you go to the local library and start researching the history of this place, you'll find out that many people were kicked out of the area against their will. You'll learn that there were terrible conflicts between locals here. You'll understand that the idyllic picture hides a terrible drama and hundreds of tragic fates. This is Lake Lanier, which is in North Georgia. It was named after writer Sidney Lanier, who created the poem Song of the Chattahoochee, dedicated to the river that feeds the lake. Despite the beautiful view, this isn't a natural body of water. Sidney Lanier is an artificial lake created in 1956 to fight floods caused by the river, to provide people with drinking water and hydroelectric power. The perfect place for creepy stories that often happen in small American towns. Before people created the lake, about 700 families inhabited this place. They made up a classic quiet village with farms, houses, churches, mills, and a cemetery. But when the state decided to create a lake here, the authorities forced people to leave their homes. Locals had lived here with their families for generations, and then they had to go away. Most of the buildings were moved, but the cemetery was left untouched. The graves are still there at the bottom, while people on the surface are swimming and having fun. 200 years before the lake appeared, the Cherokee tribe had lived in this place. In the 1830s, they also got kicked out of their territory. Then, in the first half of the 20th century, there was a very big conflict between locals. The reasons for the conflicts are quite scary, so we won't dwell on them. But it's important to note that more than 1,000 people got hurt by this conflict and were forced to leave their homes. So, we have a place where tragic episodes have happened 3 times, and where a lot of people have been injured throughout history. Of course, there's no scientific evidence that those events had any effect on the lake. But if we talk about spiritual, karmic plane, then see for yourself. Lake Lanier is considered one of the most dangerous lakes in history. 500 people have drowned or disappeared here since 1956, and almost 200 since 1994. About 11 million tourists visit the shores of the lake every year. About as many people visit the Louvre Museum in Paris. But don't think that accidents happen here because there are too many people there. A few dozen miles to the west, there's another popular lake, Altoona, and the same number of tourists come there every year. But there are almost 3 times fewer accidents there. For some reason, people drown at Lake Lanier, and motorboats often collide. There are no seasons with more or fewer accidents. So the cause of these tragedies may be hidden underwater. Many sunken boats, fishing nets, flooded villages, and graves lie at the bottom. Perhaps when someone dives here, they get tangled in nets, or stuck among debris or bump into rocks. Motorboats may not notice tourists passing by on air mattresses and crash into them. The water in the lake isn't very transparent, which makes it difficult to search for the missing. And then, there's also the legend that spirits inhabit this lake. Locals talk about phantoms who come out of the graves and try to pull the living under the water. Others tell stories about 27 ghosts of those who drowned in the lake over the years, but whose bodies haven't been found. But the scariest legend is probably the one about the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, 2 friends, Delamay Parker Young and Susie Roberts, got into their car. They drove to the gas station, refueled the car, didn't pay for the gas, and went to the lake. The evening started fun, but it turned into a terrible night. The girls drove off the bridge when they were crossing the lake and disappeared. For an entire year, no one knew what had happened to them, but people thought that the lake had taken them. One day, a local fisherman went to the lake to catch some fish and suddenly noticed a body in a blue dress floating near the bridge. It was poorly preserved, so the examination couldn't determine the identity of the person. But many locals were sure that the body belonged to Parker Young. Some people saw that day that she borrowed this dress from Roberts and put it on. But where was the other girl? And why was there no car? A few decades later, in 1990, authorities discovered an old Ford sedan at the bottom of the lake. They extracted the car and found the body of Susie Roberts inside. After this tragedy, locals started telling scary stories about how a transparent Parker Young in a blue dress grabs passers-by by their clothes and tries to drag them into the water. So, what do we have now? 3 terrible events have occurred at this lake over the last 200 years, affecting thousands of people. There's an old cemetery at the bottom of the lake, which the authorities decided not to move. 2 girls drowned there. At first glance, these events are not related to modern accidents. But honestly, we all feel and understand this connection inside. Places with such heavy energy and such a past may influence the present. Some skeptics will argue with this, but let's be honest, hardly anyone will buy a house when something terrible and tragic has happened. Today, Lake Lanier is more popular than ever. Millions of tourists, beautiful views, and picnics. Nothing suspicious, but you should still be careful. Just open the internet and read about the accidents happening there. Those missing people didn't expect their vacations to turn into a tragedy, so be very vigilant if you decide to come there. Now let's finish our video with something mysterious but more upbeat. How about the Vanishing Lake in Northern Ireland? You come there, swim, take cool pics, and decide to come back for a picnic with your friends. You come the next day with your homies, but hey, there's no lake. It's gone. Your friends are so angry. They come all their way there because of a silly prank. You feel like you're going crazy. Well, calm down. You're fine. There was a lake. In fact, it's still there. It just has a curious geological quirk. 3 streams fill this lake, but none of them can flow out. The lake fills up quickly, and then, when it reaches a certain point, it just flushes away, like the water in a toilet bowl. There are gaps at the bottom of the lake that are clogged with peat and debris. They act like bath plugs. But when there's too much water, these plugs fly out and the lake goes underground. So relax and come here another day when it's filling again. The road that leads to the lake is slightly raised off the ground so that people can walk along it. Previously, this road went underwater and reappeared. And don't be surprised if one night you see an old horse-drawn carriage on this road. It does look scary and creepy. Legend says that more than 100 years ago, a carriage with horses was crossing this lake when the water level was high. The carriage sank, and locals have been telling scary tales about the phantom ever since.
You can find many picturesque lakes in Louisiana, but one of them stands out among all the others. This deep lake is calm and beautiful, but its origin is closely connected with the story of a large-scale disaster that changed the entire ecosystem. A catastrophe that people managed to miraculously survive. And this disaster happened because of a mistake of just one person. To discover the incredible history of Lake Lanier, let's move back in time to more than 40 years ago. So, it's 1980, early morning of November the 21st. Several workers start their shift. They continue searching for oil. A drill on an oil rig in the middle of the small Lake Lanier is an important part of this process. The depth of this lake is about 11 feet. If a grown-up person stands on its bottom and raises their hands, their fingers will reach the surface of the water. Everything goes without problems at first, but then the drill stops. It seems to have jammed at the bottom. Workers try to free the drill, but they can't do it. The engine gets overloaded, and people hear a few pops coming from below. At this moment, the entire rig begins to lean toward the water. The The workers on the platform realize that something terrible is happening, so they run to the shore. A strong rumble comes next. The colossal $5 million drilling rig, with a height of a 15-story building, is slowly sinking into the water. But the lake's depth is no greater than a 1-story building. How is it possible? Imagine the water leaving your bathtub through the drain hole. The same thing is happening to the lake now. The drill has punched a small hole in the walls of a salt mine, whose tunnels run through the rock under the lake. And now, millions of gallons of water are pouring into these tunnels. The created pressure is 10 times as great as that in a fire hydrant stream. The miners find out about the disaster. While the water is flooding the tunnels, they're trying to evacuate from the mine. 50 people are making their way through the water and mud using mine carts. A slow elevator can only lift 8 people at a time. It takes 7 approaches to evacuate all the miners. Can you imagine how the people at the end of the line feel? The devastating flood is behind you, and several dozen people and 1 slow elevator are ahead. Fortunately, all the people manage to escape. The water displaces the air from the mine, compressing it. First, it breaks through all the tunnels, and then it comes out from the ground in the form of geysers. But the disaster doesn't end there. A large funnel forms in the middle of the lake. The hole is expanding, pulling more water inside. The land around the lake begins to crumble and fall into the mine. Along with the soil, the funnel pulls in 11 barges, a tugboat, the entire oil platform, and many trees. The whole beach around the lake disappears. There's so much water in the salt cave that the direction of the flow of the nearest river changes. Now, not only the lake, but also the water from the surrounding area is flooding the mine. The funnel is expanding. From the side, you can see the formation of a massive waterfall with a height of 164 feet. This is the height of a 16-story building. At this moment, it's the highest waterfall in Louisiana. Fortunately, the destruction doesn't last long. 2 days have passed. The mine is completely flooded. The funnel has disappeared. The water calms down. Several days ago, it was a shallow lake. Now it has a new bottom, located at a depth of 200 feet. This changes the ecosystem forever. New species of fish and animals appear there. The drilling company paid a fine of $45 million to compensate for the damage to all flooded enterprises. Of course, people investigated the cause of this disaster. It turned out that the engineer made a mistake in the maps. He used incorrect calculations to select the drilling coordinates and got to the salt mine. There is another lake with a huge funnel inside, and it's also artificial. But this time, people created it on purpose. Welcome to California, to Lake Berryessa. Previously, there was a small farming town of Monticello near the lake. In the last century, people built a dam here. But during the rainy season, the water level in the lake rose and poured over the dam's edges. Water flooded the land and washed away roads. You need to make the dam even higher to solve the problem, right? This is quite logical, but the town's engineers thought of something better. They dug a hole near the lake and covered its insides with concrete. It looks like a wide circular tunnel leading into the ground. During the rainy season, the level of the water rises high enough to reach the pit, and millions of gallons of water pour into it. It resembles a giant drain hole in the bathroom. All the water entering the hole travels through a horizontal tunnel and gets into the nearest bay. This is an effective and practical invention, and an excellent attraction for many tourists. Skateboarders also like to hang out here. When the water level is low, they gather at the bay, near the place where the water flows out. The round tunnel is an excellent playground for skateboarding. We're moving to the desert of Yemen. There, we're also looking for a hole, but without a lake this time. This hole, the size of a basketball court, is in the middle of the desert. Scientists still don't know what's at the bottom of the hole or what formed it, but the locals are sure this pit is a portal to the underground world where evil spirits live. Even if you don't believe in all this, the giant hole in Yemen can still scare you. Sometimes, strange, frightening sounds come from the depth of this black abyss. And there's always an unpleasant smell of rotten eggs wafting out of there. The hole is so dark, it absorbs sunlight. You won't see anything, even if you point a flashlight inside. People have studied this place with the help of powerful optical lenses and drones, but they couldn't see anything except the frightening darkness. From a distance, this place looks like a blob of black paint in the middle of a golden sandy canvas. Even now, the giant hole in Yemen is one of the most poorly studied and mysterious places on Earth. But recently, a group of brave people got down to its bottom. They found stalactites, snakes, and even waterfalls there. Scientists are trying to figure out how the hole appeared and how old it is. Some say that the hole was caused by construction works when geologists were drilling the soil in search of minerals. The drilling process made the surface of the ground collapse. And now let's visit another famous hole hidden under a huge amount of water. It's the Mariana Trench. This is the deepest pit on Earth, located in the western Pacific Ocean near the Mariana Islands. It's so deep, it can fit 1.5 Everests. To dive to the bottom, you need special equipment that can withstand intense water pressure. It should be a sturdy bath escape with an ample supply of oxygen. It's expensive, but the trip is worth it. In the Mariana Trench, you can meet unique, strange creatures you will never see on the surface or in some other region of the ocean. Toxic crayfish and microorganisms feeding on a substance that looks like oil live here. You can meet fish with transparent bodies and see their organs and skeleton. Creepy, toothy monsters similar to anglerfish can swim by. These creatures seem fragile and harmless. But look at yourself. You're inside a bath escape made of alloys of several metals. Water pressure can turn an ordinary car into flatbread here. And these fish with transparent bodies swim as if they're just hanging out in the pool.
The tranquil-looking Lake Manaun in Cameroon is one real trickster. At first, it may seem calm and peaceful, but this lake is like a fiery volcano waiting to erupt at any moment. And it doesn't even have the decency to give any warning signs. Its last outburst was way back in 1984, which caused a bang that left everyone in awe. It's like the lake's got a soda can mechanism down there. Or, in technical terms, it experiences a limnic eruption. This rare phenomenon happens when gas from deep under the water suddenly erupts. Certain things have to happen prior for it to occur, though. There are some things you can look out for if you feel worried. For starters, if the vegetation around a lake looks a bit flattened, it might have previously experienced a limnic eruption. That's because the water can pop up with a lot of pressure and overflow. The water being a bit warmer all of a sudden can also mean you need to head to safety. There's this lake in Kazakhstan that looks like a total disaster on the surface, with empty tree trunks sticking out of the water. Not cute. But if you're feeling daring and want to take a swim, you'll be transported to a whole new world. Its story goes back to the year 1911, when there was a landslide that filled the valley with rainwater, completely submerging a local forest. As mesmerizing as it might sound, it's no easy task to dive in. The water is freezing, and all the algae, plants, and submerged trees make it a risky obstacle course. Have you heard about this scorching lake on the sunny Caribbean island of Dominica? The water around the edges is at a sweltering 180 to 197 degrees Fahrenheit. No wonder no one has the guts to measure the middle. It's that hot. Sure, the heat may go down once in a while, but who knows when those waters will start boiling again? Plus, this place is full of nasty gases like carbon dioxide. Because of them, let's just say it doesn't exactly smell like roses. More like rotten eggs. So unless you want to end up looking like a boiled lobster, I suggest you stay away from these waters. If you're planning a trip to Tanzania, You might want to think twice before diving into Natron Lake. Sure, it's got a beautiful reddish hue, but that's thanks to some bacteria that call this lake home. And don't even get me started on the pH levels. They're so high they might even strip the color off your swimsuit. But hey, at least the flamingos like it there. Those acid-loving birds are living their best lives in a group with 2.5 million of their closest feathered friends. How come these birds manage to thrive there, you might wonder? Well, no predators means no stress, which equals easy breeding. They also love feasting on that fancy bacteria, which makes the water all pink. You may think that Belize's Great Blue Hole is just calling out to you with its stunning blue hues and close proximity to land. But hold your flippers, because there's a catch. Sure, it's about 900 feet across and 300 feet deep, but lurking beneath the surface is a confusing patterns of tunnels filled with coral and wildlife. It's like finding your way through a maze at a theme park, but with more fish. And as if that wasn't tricky enough, the deeper you go, the fewer creatures you'll encounter. Why, you ask? Well, it turns out that there's a sneaky layer of hydrogen sulfide that covers the entire width of the hole, depriving any living creature of oxygen. Plan on heading to the Devil's Kettle waterfall in Minnesota? This one won't necessarily be dangerous for you, but you might end up losing some of your stuff out there if you don't pay attention. That's because this waterfall experiences a phenomenon that's a real head-scratcher for geologists. One part of the waterfall flows normally, while the other part disappears into a big ol' hole. And get this, not even ping pong balls can make it out. Scientists decided to investigate, and they went all out, even using GPS trackers. Initially, they couldn't figure it out until they realized that the hole acts like a giant blender. That water is getting spun around so hard, it's basically obliterating everything in its path. They finally measured the water volume and saw that it was still there, so it was supposed to come back out somewhere. The most likely explanation is that the water is probably re-emerging in the stream located beneath the waterfall. You've surely heard of the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, that's old news. But let me tell you about the Pacific's very own watery trap called the Devil's Sea. It's like a game of hide and seek, but with ships. They disappear and we can never find them again. The Kayo Maru No. 5 was on a mission to investigate a volcanic island, but the trip ended up being just one way. Add a dash of detective work to the subject and you'll find out the whole story about the Devil's Sea is more myth and less fact. But it doesn't make it any less interesting. If you're still interested in some mysterious ship disappearance, then Lake Superior is the place you'll want to read about. Even the most skilled scuba divers can't find a single piece of all those lost vessels. The main character of this lake story was a ship called the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, the biggest one to sink in the Great Lakes. To this day, people aren't sure why it sank. So, you're planning a little swim in one of the Great Lakes, huh? Well, might want to steer clear of Lake Michigan, unless you're really into extreme water sports. This bad boy has a reputation for being the most dangerous of the bunch, thanks to some sneaky undercurrents that like to snatch unsuspecting swimmers. Make sure to watch out for those pesky piers and docks that only add to the lake's swimming difficulty. If you're feeling adventurous, you might want to skip the months of October or November. This is when the temperatures start to drop and the currents get extra wild. Tibet has its dangerous lake too, and at first glance, it's gorgeous. But don't get too excited. It's got a salt content so high that nothing can survive in it. Some villagers around there actually consider it to be tainted with some sort of substance. The cherry on top? Other locals believe there's a selfish creature living in the lake who's hogging up all the space for itself. No wonder its nickname is Darkness. No list of dangerous waters is complete without Lake Victoria, the big kahuna of African lakes and the third biggest in the whole wide world. But beware, not all its waters are safe for us humans. Some regions can be real troublemakers because this lake has its own personal climate. And what does that mean? Mostly that you can't trust the weather here one bit. You could be soaking up some sweet rays one second, and the next you're running from a torrential downpour. Unless you want to be caught swimming in a storm, steer clear of this moody lake. You might have already seen pictures of Lake Hillier. It's like a giant pool of grapefruit juice in Australia. Scientists have been scratching their heads over it for centuries because they still can't figure out with certainty why it's pink. But here's the kicker, it's not the only one. Yep, there's another pink lake out there called Lake Retba. Both of these lakes have super high salt content, which is apparently a magnet for some fancy microorganisms. These little guys produce beta-carotene, you know, the substance that's in carrots. And that's what gives these lakes their groovy colors. Interested in swimming in this lake? It's not technically dangerous because the water has such high amounts of salt in it. There are no scary sea creatures to worry about. But, on the other hand, you'll need to make sure you don't accidentally take a sip. Drinking highly salted water will make you dehydrate faster than a plant in the desert.
Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes, or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example, it's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lakebed. They also kinda resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though. Glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake. Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish. Small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lakebed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these, where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot, and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances. Boats and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people notice there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide?
A strange lake appeared in India 52,000 years ago. It was formed here literally out of nowhere. I recall it was a Wednesday. Anyway, for tens of thousands of years, people came up with various scary stories about the lake. Some locals believe this place was cursed. Others think that the lake's bottom hides the gateway to the underworld. But those are all legends. The real reason for the appearance of this Lonar Lake is even more surprising. At first, scientists were sure that the lake was an ancient crater of a long-extinct volcano. It's in a balsam field made of 65-million-year-old volcanic rock. But then, geologists conducted a detailed analysis of the soil and water and found that Lonar Lake had a space origin. Geologists found a unique glass inside the lake that forms only with a strong impact and energy release. 52,000 years ago, a huge meteorite weighing 2 million tons fell into this place. It was almost 6 times heavier than the Empire State Building. The striking power was so high that the volcanic rock melted and turned into glass. Perhaps the bottom of this lake still contains particles of this giant meteorite that flew to us from the distant space depths. Okay, we have a lake created by a space object more than 50,000 years ago. But even this is not the strangest thing about it. In 2020, the locals noticed that Lonar Lake had turned pink. In just a few days, the salt water mysteriously changed its color. Biologists and geologists immediately took water samples to the Scientific Research Center. The detailed analysis showed that the water contained an increased level of unique microbes. They accumulate on the surface and emit some pink pigment. Soon these microbes settled to the bottom, and the lake became transparent again. Also, rains help the water go back to its usual appearance. These microbes color the lake and make the pink plumage of flamingos even brighter. The birds get food from the Lonar Lake and absorb these pink bacteria. Now, Lonar Lake is a popular place among tourists. But this is not the only thing that may surprise you in India. Our next stop is a small village with about 2,600 people located in a hot rainforest. The locals are very hospitable. They welcome not only tourists, but also one of the most venomous reptiles on the planet. King cobras are crawling in almost every house in this village. Locals are happy to see them as if they were their pets. People share water and food with these animals. They even give the reptiles a special corner where they can relax from the scorching sun. Ah, cobras crawl in houses, schools, and even on the streets. Humans and reptiles are used to each other and feel safe. There has never been a case of a cobra attack in the village. It's the only place in the world where these venomous reptiles live in such harmony with people. Now, imagine a town that consists of many little united villages. The residents are all engaged in agriculture. They know how to extract water from ground rocks, and they bargain well. The town has been thriving for several centuries, and people live happily in it. Then, one day, everything changes. All the residents quickly pack up their stuff and run away from their homes. Overnight, the town becomes abandoned. It is a real story that happened in the state of Rajasthan in 1825. And still, no one knows why the people disappeared from there. The most popular version says that the cruel local ruler collected large taxes from the locals. Then he fell in love with the daughter of the chief of this town and threatened that he would collect extra taxes if the girl refused to be his wife. Citizens decided to support the woman and her father and left their homes in one day. This town is still empty, but the locals from the nearest cities are afraid to approach. Our next stop is the state of Maharashtra. There's a small village there with very positive people. They go to stores, cafes, schools, and banks. Everything here seems quite ordinary, and you wouldn't notice what's so special about this place. But just wait for the night to come. People go to sleep and no one locks their houses. There are no locks at all in this village. The door of any building is always open here. The owners leave the shops, cafes, and libraries open. When locals go to work, they don't lock up their homes either. They don't hide money and jewelry. The reason for this is the complete absence of thefts. The villagers are sure that anyone can get into serious trouble for stealing. According to a legend, about 300 years ago, after prolonged rains and floods, a large black stone slab appeared in the center of the village. This slab symbolized an Indian mythical creature that watched over the locals. At some point, people stopped locking their houses because they knew that no one would dare to commit theft in that creature's face. In 2015, a police station was opened here, but almost no one has reported an incident since then. The building doesn't even have doors because the police don't keep anyone there. Another fantastic place in India is a village in the state of Assam. Hundreds of locals prepare here for an unusual celebration every now and then. They arrange a magnificent wedding ceremony. They set the table, dress up in beautiful costumes, and bring gifts. And all this for the newlyweds. But instead of people, frogs get married here. Locals hold weddings for wild frogs to summon rain. The incredible thing is that the ceremony looks just like a real wedding. The fun can last all day until late at night. Now, there's one dangerous and inaccessible island in India. You can find it in the Bay of Bengal. It's called the North Sentinel. It's a small piece of land that looks like a tropical paradise. But you won't be able to get there. Since 1956, nobody can travel to this place. The Coast Guard is always sailing around and patrolling the area. The reason for this is the local Sentinelese tribe. This tribe lives isolated from the whole world. They don't know about modern technologies, the internet, or television. For centuries, the Sentinelese have lived on their own, away from civilization. And the people from India want to keep it that way. Anyone who approaches their island is welcomed by the tribe with a flurry of spears and arrows. And it doesn't matter if you're coming by boat or helicopter. Another reason why you can't get on the island is the Sentinelese immune system. The Coast Guard is trying to protect the local tribe from possible diseases and infections that outsiders can bring with them. The locals have no immunity from the flu or even a simple cold. They don't know what that is. Also, there are coral reefs and limestone around the island, which significantly complicates the passage of large ships. Despite all the prohibitions, many people tried to get to the island. In 1880, one officer accidentally discovered this island. He went ashore and found a noble soil ideal for growing coconut palms. The officer also noticed several huts on the island, but didn't dare meet the locals. Explorers and travelers presented the islanders with fish as a gift many times. The locals accepted it, asked for more, but still didn't let them approach their houses. It was also challenging to make friends with the tribe because they communicate in one of the most difficult languages to learn in the world. Scientists and linguists have been studying this language for decades. At the end of the 20th century, outsiders made some progress in building a connection with the tribe. In 1991, a team of anthropologists invited the islanders aboard a large ship. they gave bags of coconuts to tribe members. This may be where the phrase "left holding the bag" came from. Or not. Otherwise, let's just leave these folks alone, shall we?
There's a lake in the heart of Asia that holds 1/5 of all the world's liquid freshwater. It's more than all the 5 Great Lakes have together. Even if all the rivers on our planet suddenly changed their direction and set on a mission to drain this lake, it would take them a whole year to finish the job. I'm talking about the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. If you decide to go all the way down to its deepest point, prepare for a journey of almost 5,400 feet. The descent takes several hours, but the rift floor of the lake is way deeper, between 5 to 7 miles beneath the surface. It means it could be even further down than the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest known place on Earth. The amount of water it has would be enough for everyone on Earth to have something to drink for up to 50 years. This mighty giant of a lake replenishes its water completely every 383 years. Baikal has a great delivery crew of over 300 rivers and streams, bringing their waters right in. And only one river flows out of Baikal, the Angara, which is headed straight for the Arctic Ocean. Baikal isn't only the deepest, but also the oldest existing freshwater lake in the world. It formed at least 25 million years ago. It all began when the Earth's crust decided to play Tetris and created the lake and the surrounding mountains. At some point, Baikal must have been just a humble riverbed, but then tremors and fractures shook the Earth, and the distance between the shores got bigger. Water levels rose thanks to the melting glaciers. Then, several lakes formed and later merged into one. Baikal is one of around 20 lakes in the world that are older than 1 million years. And since it wasn't disturbed by glacial periods, it's a perfect research ground for scientists. Its deep-drilled core sediments can tell a lot about the climate of our planet in different periods. Since Baikal is in a rift basin with 2,000 seismic tremors per year, the lake is deepening and still growing in size. Its shores drift apart at around the same rate as South America and Africa are moving away from each other, so it has all the potential to become an ocean. Another thing Baikal has in common with the oceans is that it has water rich in oxygen, even at its lowest depths. This is one of the reasons why the fauna of the lake is so incredibly rich. It's home to over 2,500 various animals and 1,000 plant varieties. Around half of them are unique and only exist in this area, like the endemic algae, the Baikal omul fish, and the Baikal oilfish. There are also some bears, elk, and lynx living on its shores. They must appreciate the fact that the temperatures around the lake are always higher than the rest of Siberia, thanks to its huge water mass. Most Baikal dwellers prefer to stick to the bottom of the lake, but there's one brave guy you'll meet if you decide to visit. Meet the Baikal seal, also known as Nerpa. It's the only true freshwater seal in the world. Nerpa's eyes are so cute it nearly landed the part of Puss in Boots in Shrek. Nerpa in Boots sounds good to me. These huge eyes are there to help them follow their favorite pelagic fish underwater. There are other seal kinds that can handle freshwater or use it to breathe, but these cuties spend their entire lives in it. But wait, how did seals, which are supposed to be oceanic creatures, end up in a lake miles and miles away from the sea? About 400,000 years ago, during the Pleistocene era, these adventurous creatures traveled up the river and drainage systems that connected Lake Baikal to the Arctic Ocean. The ringed seal that still lives in the Arctic is believed to be the Baikal seal's closest ancestor. Today, Baikal seals are confined to their freshwater home because of the changes in waterways. And they seem to be pretty happy with their home as they can choose from a huge variety of food to eat. The seals mostly hang out in the north and central areas of the lake, but move south in the winter. The lake gets covered with ice, which they use as a chill-out zone, just like their oceanic cousins use rocks or the beach. Since at least 1969, Lake Baikal has had some mysterious ice rings pop up randomly here and there. At some point, they got so big that the astronauts even spotted them from space. The rings usually appear in late April, but can be there in January or May. Scientists couldn't crack the code on how these rings form for a while. They had all sorts of theories, and the most popular involved methane gas bubbles from the lake's depths. But then, scientists noticed that some of the rings were in shallower waters, where gas emissions don't happen. So, an international team of scientists decided to solve the mystery. They traveled to Lake Baikal, drilled holes in the ice, and dropped sensors into the water. In 2016, when they started the research, they heard that 2 vans had gotten stuck in the mysterious ice rings. Once they had analyzed the data from the sensors, it turned out that the secret behind the rings was warm eddies flowing clockwise under its ice cover. The currents were less intense in the center of the eddies, so the ice above them was thicker at the edges. The waters of the lake are so clear that you can see some extremely deep parts up to over 130 feet down. This is thanks to the surrounding mountains that send off melting ice right in. Plankton that live in the lake also helps clean the floating debris. When this crystal clear water freezes, it forms an unusually thick and see-through layer of ice. The wind likes to play sculptor on Baikal and creates one-of-a-kind pieces of art here. It picks up water, which, of course, freezes into the most unusual designs. Frozen bubbles and icicles you've never seen before. The location and geography of the lakes and the cycles of melting and refreezing create the perfect conditions for this ice workshop. And you can even see rocks that seem to be floating. The bottom of the rock freezes to the surface of the ice. Then, the strong winds wear away the surroundings, leaving a perfect pedestal for the rock. If you think the floating rocks look eerie, how about Baikal's version of the Loch Ness Monster? The local Buryat people have a legend about the water dragon master that lives in the lake. A dragon is believed to be the most powerful creature living on Earth in Asian mythology. They believe there are 4 dragons living in the 4 seas, each responsible for one of the cardinal directions. Baikal is the North Sea in this story. The image of this dragon is supposedly etched in ancient petroglyphs on the cliffs of Baikal. There's also a hefty stone slab that looks like a monument dated back to somewhere between the 3rd and the 9th century BCE, depicting a mysterious water monster. Imagine the stories this stone could tell, echoing the whispers of a bygone era and leaving us to unravel the enigma of the Baikal cliffs. The legend says that a local warrior was chasing the dragon. He finally reached the largest Baikal island of Alkan. He was ready to face and defeat the dragon, but the beast turned into a beautiful girl, and they got married. That's one unusual twist to a classic defeat the dragon and take the girl story. So, local legends describe that dragon as a giant sturgeon with an almost gator-like snout and armored body. In reality, the mythical monster must be one of the many huge fish living in the lake. They can afford to grow to several feet in length thanks to the high levels of oxygen in the water. Beluga sturgeon can weigh several thousands of pounds, lives up to 50 or 60 years, and never stops growing.